my heart. The way she sounded broke my heart because you know I didn't deserve that. Nor did her baby.
But I know you need to shoot her in the face. You want me to shoot her? In the face? No.
You think family is supposed to be safe. You think your home is a sanctuary where love and trust protect you. But sometimes the people you should be able to trust the most are the very ones who will hurt you. That terrifying truth became a reality in Fresno, California, when 18-year-old Yaneli Solorio Rivera and her 3-week-old daughter Celine were brutally murdered, not by strangers, not by people from the streets, but by someone who shared their blood. In the early morning hours of September 24, 2022, Yaneli and her baby were asleep in their home when her older sister, Yoreli Solorio Rivera, carried out a plan fueled by jealousy and resentment for her sister giving birth before her. When officers finally pieced together the events, the scene was nothing short of horrifying. Yaneli and her newborn daughter never woke up. Both were shot as they slept, their lives stolen in an act of betrayal that stunned the community. Yaneli, a young mother just beginning her journey, and her newborn daughter were victims of a crime that revealed the darkest side of sibling rivalry. A reminder that sometimes the deepest wounds come from within the family itself. But before we get to that heartbreaking moment that took 2 innocent lives, let me take you back to where it all began. How a place of safety, a family home, became the setting of unimaginable violence. Yaneli and Yoreli Solorio Rivera were 2 sisters with names so similar, it was almost as if their parents wanted them inseparable. And for much of their childhood, they were. They grew up in the same home in Fresno, California, sharing rooms, meals, and memories. Yet beneath the surface of this closeness lurked the tension that would eventually tear their bond apart, a tension that would simmer quietly for years before boiling over. 18-year-old Yaneli was radiant, an unstoppable force of life. She was outgoing, vibrant, and full of energy, and anyone who met her immediately noticed the light she brought into a room. Loud, fun, always smiling, Yaneli carried a charisma that drew people toward her. She excelled in basketball, leading her school team to a Valley championship, and her friends said she had a way of making every space she entered feel alive. Teachers admired her determination and drive, noting how she balanced schoolwork, sports, and a budding social life with ease. Her family remembers her as the youngest spark of light in their household, the one everyone gravitated toward. She was the type of person who could make even a mundane day feel extraordinary, someone whose laughter filled a room and whose presence was impossible to ignore. She was more than just a student or athlete. She was a daughter, a sister, and now a mother who had just begun a new chapter in her life. In September 2022, Yaneli welcomed her daughter Celine into the world, a tiny, delicate life just 3 weeks old, already bringing immeasurable joy and hope. Friends and family described Celine as a constant source of smiles, a small bundle of warmth cradled lovingly in her mother's arms. Yaneli embraced motherhood fully, documenting milestones, sharing photos, and living each day with pride and happiness. She dreamed of a future for Celine full of opportunities, love, and laughter, the same kind of life she had always imagined for herself. Then there was 22-year-old Yoreli, Yaneli's older sister, who walked a very different path. According to those who knew her, Yoreli had long lived in the shadow of her sister. Yaneli's light and achievements drew praise and attention, while Yoreli often felt overlooked, invisible, and forgotten. Over the years, that quiet resentment deepened, and when Yaneli became a mother, jealousy turned sharper, more personal. The birth of Celine seemed to amplify the feelings of inadequacy and envy that Yoreli had been carrying for years. Little did anyone know, this jealousy wasn't harmless. Yoreli's bitterness wasn't hidden, it spilled into public spaces, particularly on social media, where she left pointed, cruel comments about her sister. Friends recall feeling uneasy about her posts, noting a harshness and intensity that hinted at deeper malice. It was a warning sign, subtle but undeniable, of a tension that had quietly festered into something darker, something that would soon take an irreversible form. As family and friends celebrated new beginnings, an undercurrent of envy and resentment was brewing, a storm that would have devastating consequences. Imagine that resentment combined with a partner who had a violent past. 26-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales, a validated gang member with convictions including kidnapping and firearms offenses, Ureli and Martin began plotting together, driven by envy, rage, and a calculated desire to erase the life that had always shadowed Ureli. She told him she wanted Yaneli gone, and not just Yaneli, Celine too. The night before the murders, Martin handed Ureli a Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun. He instructed her where to aim, how to shoot, and the exact way to carry out their plan. Ureli agreed, no hesitation, no second thoughts. Everything was meticulously planned. Witnesses would later reveal that Ureli had shown an uncanny calm, discussing the act in ways that made the danger terrifyingly real to anyone who heard her. On the morning of September 24, 2022, Ureli entered her younger sister's bedroom. Yaneli and Celine were asleep, peaceful, unaware of the nightmare approaching. Yaneli held Celine in her arms, cradling her in the only place the baby had ever known as safety, her heart filled with the innocence and trust of a mother who believed the world was still a good place. Then, Ureli pulled the gun. She shot multiple times. Yaneli was struck in the arms, abdomen, and chin. Celine, still in her mother's arms, was shot in the back. Yaneli tried to protect her daughter in those final moments, but there was no stopping the horror. Celine never got to see her first day, her first laugh, her first milestone. She never got to grow up.
The baby involved, Celine, would have been 2 months old today. This is very, very high priority for us because it is such a heinous, horrendous crime in our community, and we're not going to stand for it. We have to solve this crime. We have to bring justice to the victims in this case, and we will not stop until that happens. We need the community to get involved. Somebody out there knows something.
Specific to this incident, this one is definitely a bridge too far as a young mother, young child being gunned down the way that they were. The investigative team that you see before you and also investigative partners that you don't see on this stage, all of us will not stop till we are able to identify the individual or individuals who are responsible for this, hold them to account, and bring justice.
After committing the act, Ureli handed the gun back to Martin and watched him flee through the garage. Minutes later, 911 calls began. Neighbors had heard the gunshots and rushed to check. Officers arrived at the scene that left even the most seasoned detectives shaken. A mother and her newborn, both dead, both shot multiple times, the baby still in the mother's arms. Ureli remained at the scene, playing the role of a grieving sister, crying and confused, concealing the truth of what she had done. After the horrific murders of Yaneli and Celine, Fresno police faced a chilling reality. The perpetrator was someone the family knew, someone inside the home. This was not the act of a stranger. Initial assumptions of a murder-suicide were quickly discarded. Yaneli's wounds indicated a third-party shooter. Investigators immediately focused on family dynamics and close contacts. They interviewed everyone in the household and examined cell phone records, social media interactions, and witness accounts. Ureli's story began to unravel almost immediately. She claimed that she had been elsewhere the night before the murders and tried to deflect blame onto others. She even suggested maybe it was the baby's father or someone holding a grudge. But forensic evidence, cell phone tracking, and witness statements contradicted her version. It became increasingly clear that the shootings were neither accidental nor random. They were meticulously premeditated. Cell phone records and surveillance evidence placed Ureli with Martin at the time of the murders. Witnesses reported seeing Martin flee the house with the gun immediately after the shootings. Detectives were able to piece together the timeline. Ureli had been with Martin, received the firearm from him, and executed the plan according to their own device together. Evidence included text messages between them, phone records confirming their whereabouts, and the eventual recovery of the 9mm Smith & Wesson handgun used in the killings. Once the evidence was undeniable, Fresno police arrested Ureli Solorio Rivera and Martin Morales.
A shocking arrest in the murder of 18-year-old Yaneli Solorio Rivera and her 3-week-old daughter, Celine.
Today, police announcing the arrests of 22-year-old Ureli Solorio Rivera, Yaneli's sister, and her boyfriend, 26-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales, for 2 counts of premeditated murder.
Our Ben Morris joining us live outside Fresno Police headquarters tonight. And Ben, police now describing how they unraveled this case.
The arrests confirmed what investigators had suspected. The murders were committed by people the victims knew, people entrusted with their safety. During questioning, Ureli admitted to the killings. She confessed to shooting her sister multiple times and firing at 3-week-old Celine while she was cradled in her mother's arms.
You want me to shoot her? In the face? No.
Martin's involvement was equally clear. He provided the weapon, instructions, and assisted in executing the plan. Together, they had carried out one of the most chilling family murders the Fresno community had ever seen. When asked about remorse, investigators saw none. Police Chief Paco Balderrama commented on the disturbing lack of remorse displayed by the pair. Despite admitting to the crime, both Ureli and Martin showed no visible guilt or hesitation. Their cold, calculated actions confirmed the premeditated nature of the murders and the total disregard for human life. The charges against Ureli and Martin were severe. They were both charged with 2 counts of premeditated murders with special circumstances due to the multiple victims. In California, this meant the possibility of life without parole or even the death penalty. Their bail was set at $2 million each, reflecting the gravity of their crimes. 3 days after the murders, the Fresno community gathered for a vigil. Hundreds of people, neighbors, and friends lit candles, released balloons, and sang prayers outside the home where the tragedy occurred. Yaneli's friends remembered her as vibrant and full of joy, an outgoing young woman who could light up any room.
She was a great basketball player. In 8th grade, she led us all the way to the Valley Championship.
They spoke of her basketball victories, her leadership, and her laughter. Celine, a newborn full of promise, never had the chance to grow, explore, or experience life beyond the safety of her mother's arms. Ureli's boyfriend and Celine's father made the difficult decision to separate their burials. Blaming the family for what happened, he did not invite Ureli's family to the funeral. Ureli and Celine were torn apart even in death, yet their spirits remained intertwined in the hearts of those who loved them. Nearly 3 years after the murders, the case finally reached the courtroom. Ureli's defense attorney presented a controversial version of events, claiming that she had acted out of fear for her own children, suggesting she believed Yaneli posed a threat to them. According to her lawyer, this was not jealousy, it was an act of protection. Prosecutors strongly disputed this defense. The overwhelming evidence, including years of documented sibling rivalry, social media posts disparaging Yaneli, and detailed planning of the murders, painted a different picture. This was not an impulsive act of protection, it was calculated, motivated by long-standing envy and resentment that reached a deadly peak when Yaneli had her newborn daughter. To avoid the death penalty, Ureli entered a plea deal. She pled guilty to the murders, accepting responsibility while circumventing a full trial. The plea agreement allowed prosecutors to secure justice without the uncertainties of a jury trial. She was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, ensuring she will spend the remainder of her life behind bars.
Ureli Solorio Rivera getting 2 life sentences today without the possibility of parole for the murders of her sister Yaneli and her infant niece, as her boyfriend, 29-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales, gets 22 years for voluntary manslaughter. But inside the courtroom, it was the father of these sisters making the plea that Arroyo Morales should have a longer sentence.
Yo creo que están tomando una mala decisión.
He is the one guilty of all of this. I know that you're trying to do what's right. But as a father, I already lost one daughter, and I do not want to lose another one just because someone got away with it.
A desperate plea from the father of sisters, 25-year-old Ureli Solorio Rivera and 18-year-old Yaneli Solorio Rivera, and grandfather of 3-week-old Celine, to shift blame to Ureli's boyfriend, 29-year-old Martin Arroyo Morales. That attempt failing.
She will never be on parole. She will die in prison.
The Judge Brian Alvarez sentencing her to 2 life sentences for shooting and killing the young mother and infant in their sleep at their Fresno home on September 24th, 2022.
So Mr. Solorio is going to be losing 2 daughters today. She made a deal with the state, and the court's going to follow through with that state, and she avoided a potential death penalty.
Arroyo Morales, identified in surveillance video near the home in 2022, also reaching a plea deal for a dismissal of murder charges, was sentenced to 22 years in prison for 2 counts of voluntary manslaughter. Back then, authorities said the couple planned to kill Yaneli and her daughter with the motive being jealousy and sibling rivalry. But today, Ureli's defense, speaking on her behalf, claimed Yaneli threatened her own young children, pushing her to commit the horrific crime.
Yaneli used to threaten them, to drag them on the field, and Yareli was very concerned about safety of her children. But I just want public to understand that Michael is very remorseful for what had happened, and she's not such an evil, cold killer. This was done out of love for her children, for the safety of her children.
Both Solorio Rivera and Arroyo Morales are being transferred to state prisons, and once again, Solorio Rivera is not eligible for parole. Reporting here in downtown Fresno, Ben Morris, KC24, Local News That Matter.
At 25 years old, Ureli now faces decades of incarceration, with ample time to reflect on the lives she destroyed. Martin Arroyo Morales received a 22-year sentence for voluntary manslaughter. While the sentencing reflected his involvement, it was lower than Ureli's life sentences due to plea negotiations and distinctions in charges. This case left a family shattered beyond repair. Ureli and Yaneli's father attended the sentencing, his grief compounded by the loss of one daughter and the incarceration of the other. In court, he publicly stated his belief that Martin bore the greater responsibility, expressing heartbreak at seeing one daughter in a grave and the other sentenced to life in prison. What made the tragedy even more poignant was the absence of public voices for Yaneli and Celine. No victim impact statements were read. No family members stood to honor them in court. Their lives were recounted only through police reports, media coverage, and the memories of friends. The murder of Yaneli Solorio Rivera and her infant daughter revealed the darkest side of sibling rivalry, a betrayal so profound it shattered the very idea of family as sanctuary. Yet, Fresno was not the only place where blood ties became a weapon. In Georgia, another family would face a nightmare of its own, not at the hands of outsiders, but from the sons they had raised. The case of Christopher and Cameron Irvin showed that the danger within the home can take many forms, whether born of jealousy, resentment, or despair, and that sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who strike hardest. On September 5, 2015, in Snellville, Georgia, a quiet suburban neighborhood became the backdrop for one of the most shocking family betrayal cases in recent memory. Brothers 23-year-old Christopher Irvin and 19-year-old Cameron Irvin launched a violent attack against their parents, Yvonne and Zachary Irvin, inside their home. What unfolded was a chilling reminder that family bonds can be broken in the most unimaginable ways. The attack began with deception. The brothers laced their parents' drinks with Xanax, intending to incapacitate them. Once the substance took effect, they attempted to sabotage the house by tampering with the gas lines, hoping to cause an explosion. But when that failed, they turned to direct violence. Armed with knives and blunt objects, Christopher and Cameron assaulted their parents. Zachary was stabbed multiple times, while Yvonne was beaten severely. Despite their injuries, both parents fought back and managed to survive. The motive behind the attack was complex. Prosecutors argued that the brothers acted deliberately, planning the assault in advance. The Irvin brothers themselves later claimed that substance abuse, depression, and feelings of hopelessness had clouded their judgment. They admitted to being under the influence of drugs and alcohol at the time, which they said contributed to their actions. What made the case even more shocking was the aftermath. Despite the brutality of the attack, Yvonne and Zachary Irvin chose to stand by their sons. In court, they testified on their behalf, asking the judge for leniency. They described their sons as good young men who had lost their way, insisting that the attack did not define them. Their forgiveness stunned many observers, but it also underscored the depth of parental love, even in the face of betrayal. In 2016, both Christopher and Cameron Irvin pled guilty to charges including kidnapping, aggravated assault, and armed robbery. Each was sentenced to 20 years in prison, followed by 30 years of probation. The plea deals spared them from potentially harsher sentences, and their parents' pleas for mercy likely influenced the outcome. The Irvin case drew national attention because it combined elements of horror and humanity. On one hand, it was a brutal assault that could easily have ended in double homicide. On the other, it was a story of survival and forgiveness, with parents choosing compassion over condemnation. For many, the case raised troubling questions. How could two young men turn on the very people they nurtured? What role did mental health and substance abuse play in their decision? And how does a family heal after such a betrayal? The Irvin brothers' story remains a stark reminder that danger can sometimes come from within the home. Like Yaneli Solorio Rivera's case, it shattered the illusion of family as a sanctuary. But unlike Yaneli's tragedy, where jealousy and rivalry ended in death, the Irvin case left room for survival, reconciliation, and the possibility of redemption. The case of Yaneli and Celine serves as a stark warning. Domestic violence and family violence are not confined to strangers or street crime. They can happen within homes, by the very people we trust most. Experts stress the importance of recognizing warning signs: extreme jealousy, resentment, isolation, and controlling behaviors among family members. Community members were urged to speak up if they suspected conflicts escalating to dangerous levels. Schools, social services, and local organizations emphasized early intervention, noting that intervention could prevent tragedies like this one. Even in death, Yaneli and Celine's stories have a lasting impact. Friends, neighbors, and classmates shared memories of Yaneli's warmth, joy, and determination. Celine, though only 3 weeks old, became a symbol of innocence lost too soon. Teachers spoke about Yaneli's leadership in sports and school activities. Friends recalled her laughter, her energy, and her bright smile that could light up a room. Though gone, Yaneli's life and Celine's brief presence left an indelible mark on everyone who knew them. For the Fresno Police Department, the case was a reminder of the unpredictable nature of domestic and familial violence. Detectives noted the difficulty of investigating crimes committed within families, where evidence can be hidden, witnesses may be complicit, and motives are rooted in personal histories. For the public, the story emphasizes vigilance, awareness, and advocacy. Families are encouraged to maintain open communication, address conflicts before they escalate, and seek professional help when jealousy, resentment, or threats arise. Yaneli and Celine's lives were stolen by someone who should have protected them, by someone who shared their blood. The tragedy highlights the fragility of trust, the danger of unchecked emotions, and the devastating consequences of jealousy and planning gone wrong. While Yareli Solorio Rivera and Martin Arroyo Morales face life-altering consequences, nothing can return Yaneli and Celine to the arms of their family. Their story remains a powerful reminder that even within families, vigilance and protection are essential. Families, communities, and authorities are reminded to pay attention to subtle signs of resentment, jealousy, and conflict within households. Domestic violence is not always visible. Sometimes it lurks quietly until it explodes with irreversible consequences. The names Yaneli Solorio Rivera and Celine Solorio Rivera should never be forgotten. Their lives mattered. Their deaths serve as a chilling lesson on the consequences of unaddressed family tensions and the extremes of human jealousy. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.